Welcome to Vikings Report Rewind. I am your humble host, Ted Glover. With me are my usual partners in crime. Off to my immediate left, I got to look that. That's right, I got to look that way because I can't figure out right from left. Is the founder, lead blogger, and the numero uno honcho over at the Vikings SB Nation website, the Daily Norseman, dailynorseman.com, Christopher Gates. And right below me, right there, my partner in crime on our weekly show, Vikings Report with Drew and Ted, Drew Bunning. Behind the scenes, making all this happen somewhere in the Ethernet, probably not in China, but probably here in the United States, I would imagine. There's a lovely and talented Tunes is the Talking Cat, Ruby. Folks, welcome. How is everybody tonight? Drew, how are you doing, buddy?
I am fired up to be back here talking football with you guys. Talking football and more Viking news. And did you say Chris Gates was the lead blocker?
Maybe in high school. Have you met Chris? He's kind of a tall dude.
No, he's a lead blocker over there at Daily Norseman.
Yeah, lead blogger, blocker, tomato.
It's all the same thing.
He's a pulling guard. I'm doing great, Ted Glover. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Chris, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing all right. And it was nice of Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell to do all the things they were going to do immediately after we finished on Monday. So we got a lot of stuff to talk about. So
we do. We got a ton of stuff to talk about.
Hello, everybody. I bet you Anthony Tollison's in there. What up, Anthony?
Oh, he's been there for like 2 hours. Anthony's. I don't know. You guys get all your tickets online now. Anthony's the type of guy. I love Anthony. Anthony's the type of guy that back in the 70s and 80s would camp out 4 or 5 nights for good concert tickets.
Oh, absolutely.
We've all done it.
You stay awake the whole time.
Yeah. All right. Look, we got a big show. We're going to talk about everything. Before we get going, I want everybody to know, once again, like we do on all of our live shows, we're going to give away a prize. All you got to do is enter a comment in our live chat off to the side on our YouTube channel here and just say, hey, how's it going? What's up? And you are entered to win. We're going to be spinning the Toons' Wheel of Toons' Destiny at the end of the show. And somebody is going to win a lucky prize. To figure out what prize you might want to get, go over to VikingsReport.com. That's our humble little website that gives you all the links to our social media. Also, a link to Purple Pain Forums, our affiliate for the Minnesota Vikings news and conversation. And then from there, just comment and just play along and see how we're doing.
And I want you people to know out there that Ted's been known to give away a prize if you make a very informative comment. If you're funny, if you have a tasteless thing to say, we cover it all. But he's been known to, he's the prize king. If you make a good comment, he'll throw a prize your way. So that has a chance of happening too, Ted Glover.
The rules for giving away a prize are fast and loose.
That's what she said. Yeah. And we're off. We're money.
If you give away stuff for tasteless comments, you're not going to have anything left here for too much longer.
That's our group. That's our crowd. We love you. Very informative, but they are tasteless. I love it. There's your flash right there.
Yep. So, look, real quick, I want to give a shout out to my daughter Amber. It's her birthday today. Happy birthday, sweetie. We'll see you next week. Love you. Take care of my grandson, and we'll see you out and celebrate your birthday and Gabe's birthday next week. So, with that,
mine's next week too. Don't forget me.
Yeah, happy birthday. I'm not going to blow you a kiss though.
No. I'm good.
All right. So since we last left our intrepid heroes, and by our intrepid heroes, I mean Christopher, I mean Drew, I mean Ruby, and everybody that's watching and commenting right now. When we signed off on Monday night, about the only news that had come out of Vikings land was they had signed tight end Josh Oliver. Since then, all right, and take notes because there's going to be a quiz. They re-signed tight end Ben Ellison and outside linebacker Kenny Willekes. They're 2 big-name free agent signings, which we'll get back to. We'll circle back to in a minute. Marcus Davenport, who they signed from the Saints, 1 year, $13 million. Byron Murphy, cornerback from the Cardinals, 2 years. I can't remember the numbers right off the top of my head, but it was a very
17.
$2 million, 17, but I don't think all that was guaranteed. Really good contract. And then some Vikings free agents they re-signed. Quarterback Nick Mullins, which I kind of called. I'm not saying I didn't, but I did. Long snapper Andrew DiPaola. Kicker Greg Joseph. Center Garrett Bradbury. Reserve lineman Austin Schlottman, backup center. Running back Alexander Madison. I want to come back to those 2 guys in a minute here. I want to focus right now on Marcus Davenport and cornerback Byron Murphy, the two big signings right now. There was kind of some mixed emotions, if you will, on the Davenport signing. Drew, you were pretty fired up about it from the beginning. Chris, I want to get your views in a minute, but Drew, tell me why you were so excited about Davenport to begin with.
Because he is a very disruptive player. The only problem that Davenport's had is he can't stay healthy. Otherwise, I mean, that guy was the 14th player taken in the whole draft. He's not a slouch. He can play. 21 sacks. But if you look at his sack total, which you'd like to have more out of a defensive end, he had 9 sacks in 2019, but that was only in 11 games. 9 sacks in 11 games is a good ratio, Ted. I remember his all the stuff I watched in the draft. I went back and looked at my old draft sheet. Great movement, agility, just a disruptive player, Ted. He's very physical up front. If he stays healthy, he can revert back to what he was in 2019 when he was, a first rounder.
Yeah.
I think he you know what he does? You know what I like about Davenport? He makes a lot of splash plays in critical times. He does.
Okay.
He doesn't shy away from the spotlight. Sure, he hasn't really lived up to that status of 14th overall, but he's been banged up and hurt. That guy's a great player. You're going to be happy with him.
Chris, did you like the Davenport signing?
I did. Came as kind of a surprise. I mean, he's one of those guys that's a little younger. Like Drew said, I believe he was drafted in 2018, if I remember right. And the Saints were willing to give up an extra first-round pick to move up in order to draft him. So they thought pretty highly of him. I know a lot of people are having heartburn over the fact that he had half a sack last year, and that was about it. But, he dealt with some injuries last year. As Drew said, he has issues staying healthy. And, I'm happy with the signing. I mean, it's a 1-year deal. He could either prove himself and get more years, or, the Vikings can be done with it and no harm, no foul, that kind of thing. But, I'm interested to see where this is going to lead with some other players on the defense, and one in particular in Zadarius Smith.
Yeah, and that's so with Davenport, one of the things about Davenport, he hasn't gotten home with the sacks, but he has put a lot of pressure on quarterbacks. I think he was one of the league leaders in quarterback pressures last year. Drew's right, he was injured. I think what the Vikings are banking on, if you guys remember last year, they were one of the healthiest teams in the NFL with their new training staff and everything that was going on. And I think one of the things they're going to bank on is that training staff being able to keep guys like Davenport and Murphy healthy, and get them to realize their full potential as a player. If they can do that, I really like what Davenport brings to the table. I think with Brian Flores, the new defensive coordinator, he might be able to unlock that potential and increase those sack and pressure numbers that we've seen in his first several years in the NFL.
And you know what? He's been kind of down on one of his standpoints at Texas San Antonio was playing against the run. And he's struggled against the run since he's come to New Orleans, since he's been drafted. So he's going to have to pick up the pace on the run game a little bit. But I'm not worried about the sack total at all. Like I said, he can put up 9 sacks in 11 games when he's healthy. I'm not worried about it.
Now, Drew, you probably know more about this you do know more about this than I do. The Vikings have introduced him as an outside linebacker. Was he more of a hand in the dirt kind of guy with New Orleans as a 4-3 defensive end, or did he play a lot of outside linebacker type stuff there too? From
what I remember, he's like a pass play guy. He doesn't even play on a lot of the rundowns. He's what a pass rush specialist. So they're bringing him in on third down all the time. But for a pass rush specialist to get a half a sack, he wasn't playing full time over there with New Orleans. For me, I'm not putting that guy at linebacker. Maybe in a weird alignment, you probably would. But that guy, like Ted said, his job is to get to the quarterback. And you know what you got to like about Marcus Davenport? If you look back at that tape at Texas San Antonio, he is an angry player, Chris. He's a physical, but he's an angry player. We need anger on this team. So I'm looking forward to him to have a big year. I'm very happy with that signing.
So we all like the Davenport signing. The one position that people were wanting the Vikings to to address right away in free agency was corner. We talked about, Patrick Peterson left for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They released Cameron Dantzler, who got claimed by the Washington Commanders. We talked about that on Monday. So other than like Booth and the other guy they drafted last year,
Caleb Evans.
Thank you, Caleb Evans, who have talent, but there was, I think we said on Monday, there were only like a combined 3 starts total in the Vikings secondary. So they go out and get Byron Murphy, the Cardinals. Again, had some injury issues last year. I think he only played in 9 games, but a guy that really seems to fit what Brian Flores wants to do defensively. Chris, do you like that signing, or do you think it was kind of wasted money on a guy who's oft injured?
No, the Murphy signing is probably my favorite signing so far for a lot of the reasons you talked about. I mean, Patrick Peterson leaves for Pittsburgh, and all of a sudden the guys in the Vikings cornerback room, Andrew Booth, Caleb Evans, Tay Gowan, Kalen Barnes, I think were the only 4 cornerbacks left, and they don't have any experience. So I know Murphy's not like an older guy like Patrick Peterson is, but he's still got the experience that they don't have. And he's kind of the guy that can sort of help to guide the Booths and the Evanses and players like that in the secondary, because you can't have just a bunch of first and second year guys out there. You got to have somebody that has been there and seen things and knows what's going on. So Murphy's going to fill that spot for the Vikings. And if Brian Flores is going to be aggressive and play a lot of man coverage, that's what Byron Murphy excels at. So he's gonna fit in quite nicely here, I think.
Drew, what do you think on the Murphy signing?
You know what's strange about Byron Murphy is that year he got drafted, he went early. He went 33rd, so early second. There was only 1 cornerback drafted in the first round. When was the last time you saw that? So he was the second quarterback taken. DeAndre Baker for the Giants was the first quarterback taken.
Okay.
A thing I like about Murphy, and I know Flores wants this, he's an aggressive player, Ted. He's an aggressive guy who takes chances, but he'll blow people up. I think Murphy played under Vance Joseph when he played there in Arizona, and I think Joseph runs the similar scheme to what Flores wants to run. Okay. This was handpicked by Flores, dude. Another impressive thing is half of his career snaps in the NFL have come in at slot. So he plays slot and outside, half and half. He's played both in Arizona. And get this, Ted. In 2020 and 2021, Byron Murphy had 80 blitzes, which put him in the top 5 of the NFL in that time span.
Okay.
Most of the blitzes, probably 75% of them came from the slot. A lot of them came from the slot, but he's an aggressive corner. The only thing I ever thought bad about Byron Murphy when I looked at his tape was when he gets fooled a little bit on press coverage, or he gets fooled at all, he gets a little grabby, and he gets, some flags thrown on him because he grabs the guy and tries to, but every corner kind of does that. That and his long speed. He ran a 4.55 at the combine in 2019, and he doesn't have the jets to cover guys and I'm not worried about that either. He's a great corner. He's a great talent. He's a great talent from Washington.
I'm a big fan of both these signings, and I'm a big fan not only because of the players they are, but the defensive coordinator that they are going to be coached by. I think Brian Flores is going to bring a completely different approach, and these 2 guys are. I agree with you, Drew, that these guys were handpicked by Brian Flores to come to Minnesota and help him revamp this defense. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Again, before we get going any farther, let's see how many we got. We got 135 folks in the chat room right now. Thanks for joining us, everybody.
What up, chatters?
We're going to give away a prize, maybe 2. Don't know yet. But if you want to be eligible for a prize, all you got to do is comment on our live chat feed right here. Say hi, say hey, whatever. Say what you think about free agency, and you'll be entered. 1 comment equals 1 entry. 50 comments equal 1 entry. We're going to spin a wheel at the end, and the winner gets a prize. You can check out our prize vault at VikingsReport.com. So
Ted, let me ask you real quick.
Yeah.
The injury background with both Davenport and Murphy, they both have injury backgrounds. Does that bother you going forward? Because it's a pretty risky move when you're talking injuries, because if they don't perform or they're not on the field, it's a waste.
They're not long contracts. I mean, like Davenport's 1 year, Murphy's 2.
Right.
It's not a lot of money. And like when you get in free agency, you are either going for older guys that are past their prime that you're probably going to overpay for, or younger guys like Murphy and Davenport who are still in their mid-20s, have had a little bit of an injury history, and you're banking on them to stay healthy and contribute to your team.
Great point. Great point.
I would fall with that latter. If I'm Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, which he's done, I would go for those younger players with that potential and bank on this new training staff to keep these guys healthy.
And also Murphy's 2-year deal. This is kind of a prove-it year, so there's a lot of leeway of what to do with him in the future. I mean, you could re-sign him, whatever, but I like the cheap contracts for damn good players. I think I'm happy with both those moves, Ted.
I am too. Let's go back to the Vikings players that were re-signed. Backup quarterback Nick Mullins. I personally was a big fan of that re-signing. Drew, they say if you lock up your special teams guys in the preseason, you lock up the Super Bowl.
Oh yeah, you do.
And the Vikings just did that by locking up or re-signing Andrew DiPiola and kicker Greg Joseph. That's a football truism as much as defense wins championships, in my opinion. So I think we can just pencil the Vikings in for the Super Bowl with those two signings.
DiPiola, he's like a veteran on this team now. Isn't he like one of the oldest guys?
Yeah, Austin Schlapper was re-signed. The two names I really want to talk about here is Alexander Mattison and Garrett Bradbury. Let's talk Alexander Mattison first. Both you and I, when Chris comes back, I'd like to get his opinion, but both you and I thought Alexander Mattison was a goner.
I did.
I
don't understand.
Why do you think Kwesi Adofo-Mensah brought Alexander Mattison back?
I don't know. Why is he paying CJ Ham $4 million?
I don't know.
Okay, Madison. Here we go on Madison. I think there's a lot of everybody likes him. I don't necessarily think he's a true number one running back, but I have different criteria than other people have. I have a feeling that you have to be able to bust it to the house. If you don't have that quality, then I'm kind of looking somewhere else. And I'm not saying he's a bad running back. He could probably start at certain places, but you got to have some shimmy and some 60, 80-yard runs like Cook had. And I'm not saying that makes him a loser. I'm just saying in my book, I want a back who can score. I do. Okay. I don't just want a guy that's going to get 4 or 5 yards, because I think you should have that quality for a back.
For our special teams, my kind of snarky special teams comment, Vichologist brings some rational thought to the conversation. He says it's the first time since 2014 that the Vikings will have the same kicker, punter, and holder returning in consecutive seasons. So, like throughout the entire Mike Zimmer era, the special teams was just absolute chaos. So we've got some continuity there, and honestly, that's a good thing.
I'm gonna shake it up right now. Whoever can tell me where DiPiola went to college, you're gonna get a mug. Let's shake it up a little bit.
First person to answer Andrew DiPiola's college, you get a free prize. Chris, we were talking while you're gone. I don't know if you heard us, but we're talking about Garrett Bradbury and Alexander Mattison right now. Madison was Madison being re-signed by the Vikings a surprise to you?
Absolutely. I thought they were going to move on from both Cook and Madison here at some point, and kind of start all over fresh in the running back room with Ty Chandler and Kene Nwangwu, and maybe a draftee, maybe an undrafted free agent or whoever. But yeah, I was pretty surprised that Madison is back. I thought he would take the opportunity to go ahead and be or take himself to a place where he was guaranteed to be the lead back, and he decided not to do that. He decided to stay here in Minnesota, where we don't know what's going on with Dalvin Cook. We don't know what the Vikings are going to want to do at running back going forward here. So yeah, it was pretty surprising to see him re-sign here in Minnesota.
The first person that answered first of all, Drew, what was the correct answer for the DPO college?
I have no clue. We have to look it up. That's why I said it, because you know me, I'm pretty good on telling where the guy went to college. I don't know this guy.
All right, if it's Rutgers,
was it Rutgers?
If it's Rutgers, then the first answer I have that I see was Vicologist. If it's not Rutgers, somebody Google it and let me know. But right now,
Chris is looking it up, right?
I'm going Vicologist the winner.
No, it's Rutgers.
All right, Vicologist.
All right, congratulations, Vicologist. You win a Vikings report, Drew and Ted mug. And if you'd like to win it,
here it is, right here.
If you'd like to buy a Vikings report, Drew and Ted mug, go to VikingsReport.com, hit our Zazzle site, buy a whole bunch of cool stuff there. All right,
Vicologist, do you have glue? Vicologist. Okay, Ted, what's your take on Madison? I want to know how you feel about this guy.
Here's my thing. 2 years, $8 million, I think it was. 2 years, $7 million. I think that's very reasonable. And I think it was Vikings Uncensored Rhino that kind of echoed this sentiment earlier in the comments. If Madison is going to be your running back one in a running back by committee situation, I'm fine with it. But if you think that the Vikings are going to keep Dalvin Cook, now you've got $20 million committed to the running back position for 2023. And that seems like an incompatible number if you're an analytics guy. And Kwesi Adofo-Mensah is reportedly an analytics guy. And so far, he's playing free agency like an analytics dude. He played last year like an analytics guy. He drafted last year like an analytics guy. So if it walks like a duck, it talks like a duck, it's a duck. So I think Adofo-Mensah is an analytics guy. So I would think then there's something that's going to happen with Dalvin Cook, whether that's a restructure, a trade, I don't know. I just don't see the Vikings keeping $20 million on the books for the running back position this year. That's just me. Chris?
And it might be a while before the Vikings can actually do anything with Cook, because if you recall, I can't remember how many weeks ago it was, he's coming off of a shoulder surgery. Yeah. So any sort of trade or whatever is probably going to be contingent on him passing a physical, and he probably can't pass a physical right now. So you might have to wait until closer to draft weekend, or possibly even beyond that, before the Vikings do anything with Dalvin Cook. I mean, they don't have to right now because they're under the cap and everything, but like you said, that's a lot of money to have tied up in a run or at a position that in today's NFL just really isn't worth that much for the most part.
Chris, Drew was asking me earlier, and I honestly get so confused with contract numbers after the league year starts. I'm not sure what the answer is. If they trade him, what is the cap implication for that? Do you know?
I think his overall cap figure is $14 million or something like that. But if they trade him, they wind up being on the hook for half of it, so they'd be on the hook for about $7 million this year. I think that's how it goes. I mean, I'm sure we have people out there in comment land that are a lot smarter than I am about this sort of stuff. So, yeah, maybe someone out there knows, but I think that's the way that it works.
The other guy the Vikings re-signed that people were kind of hoping they would move on from is center Garrett Bradbury. He re-signed with the Vikings. His deal was again very manageable. It's just a couple years long. And look, the thing with Bradbury, I thought he improved last year and became a league average center, and they signed him to what I consider to be a below league average deal. Did you want Garrett Bradbury back, Chris? Yes or no?
I mean, he's serviceable enough. I mean, I don't know where else they were going to go unless they were going to be willing to spend their first round pick or a high pick on a center or something like that, like a John Michael Schmitz or someone along those lines. But, that it's a pretty manageable deal. And, Kevin O'Connell made it pretty clear that they thought Bradbury could be successful in this system that they were bringing in. And he did have his best year as a pro in 2022. So, yeah, I think this is a decent signing. The way the deal is structured, if he's bad again this year, I think they can move on from him after this season with minimal damage. But I think this is a pretty solid get for the Vikings, because you could probably do better at center, but you could probably do worse too. So just keep your continuity up front and get him in here on a manageable deal.
Yeah, it's like 3 years, $15.75 million, but they can. it's very favorable to the Vikings after the first year of the deal. Drew, you good with Bradbury back, or did you want them to get a guy in the draft like a lot of?
No, I agree with everything that Chris Gates just said. I look at they're familiar with him, and if you remember when KOC was with the Rams, that whole system, he turned Brian Allen around. I think his name is Brian Allen, the center there, who was really struggling. And people said when KOC got here, they would say, Bradbury sucks. Maybe he could turn him around, which he did.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Yep.
He turned him around this year. So I think that's what the whole telling thing was he going to do good last year to carry him over to this year? I think the Vikings are going to draft their future center, and I know who it is, and I will tell you next week when we break down the guards and centers.
Oh, next week.
Ooh,
yeah.
They're going to take a guy. They're going to take a guy late. I know who it is. He's very talented, but he's not ready to play.
Yeah.
And I don't know. What has Bradbury got? 3 years deal?
Yeah, 3-year deal.
This might be
in the business. They call that a tease, kids.
That was
that's a tease.
It's a late round guy, but he's dynamic. He's still raw and got a lot to learn. But that would be my plan, is to have the backup in place since he's not going to be ready for a couple seasons. So I would look to that. But I like the signing because he improved from last year.
Yeah, he still gave up a fair amount of pressures, but
he still gets bowled over. But come on,
I thought he got better, and I think having, Vicologist mentioned the continuity at the special teams earlier. I think continuity on the offensive line is important as well. I think Ed Ingram's going to be better. Everybody struggles in their rookie year for the most part on the interior offensive line.
Right.
We'll see. We'll see how that goes.
So is this the first draft in a few years where we're not actively looking to replace at least one guy on the offensive line at this point?
It could be, yeah. I mean, if they don't get a center, I mean, it could be. I mean, because look, it was
guard for years.
Guard for
was a
years.
disaster.
It was tackle. I mean, once Khalil flamed out, I mean, I hope these guys figure it out and can get to like league average across the board. Other than, I mean, you've got Darrisaw and O'Neal already. They're pretty good. So that's kind of all the players that have kind of been moving and shaking with the Vikings.
That's a lot of moving and shaking, man.
A couple of big restructures. I think the day after our show on Tuesday, Kirk Cousins' contract was a big deal. Were they going to extend him? Were they going to restructure him? It looks like it's just a flat restructure. And again, I'm not going to get into all the details of his contract. They added some void years to it, but the bottom line in all of that with Kirk's deal is they whacked $16 million off the cap this year, and they added a bunch of void years, but they didn't add any active years. So essentially right now, Kirk Cousins becomes a free agent at the end of the 2023 season. The offset to all those void years they added is that if he leaves the Vikings and they don't do an extension, all of that dead money will accelerate to next year, and that becomes a $28.5 million cap hit. Okay. Some people think that is the obvious lead into an extension. Some people think it's the obvious lead into drafting a guy, because if you have a quarterback on his rookie deal, the $28.5 million dead cap hit doesn't matter.
All right.
Drew, what do you think is going to happen? Extension or draft a guy?
Oh, do I have to answer? I have no idea.
You think about it, Chris. What are the Vikings going to do?
I think this is the opportunity that Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell see to put their stamp on this team. I think that that they came in last year, and I think Ziggy and Mark Wilt basically said, "All right, try to make a run with what you've got here now, and if it doesn't work, we'll move on from there." And they had a pretty successful season. They went 13-4. Obviously, there was the loss in the wild card round, but if you're going to have this team be their team, they want to have their guy at quarterback. And I think, Kirk Cousins is, I think he's 35, 36 years old. I don't think they are, I don't think they're going to bring him back next year. I think this is going to be next year the Vikings take a quarterback early and turn the keys over to him straight away if it's a guy that that Adolfo Mensa and O'Connell like. And, like all coaches, when they get their quarterback, it's going to be sink or swim with their guy, whoever that guy is next year. I haven't looked at next year's quarterback class or anything yet, but I think this is probably Kirk's last year in Minnesota, barring something like going on a run to the Super Bowl and winning it. And if that happens, he can be the quarterback of the Vikings for the rest of his life. I don't care. But beyond that, I think that this is Kirk's swan song in Minnesota, and the Vikings are going to have one of those hot young rookie quarterbacks in 2024 leading the offense again.
Another thing, Vikings Uncensored mentioned this, and I meant to bring this up, but even with that $28.5 million cap hit, the Vikings are still projected to have over $90 million in cap space next year. Drew, with all that information, we've written enough answers on our test that you can now copy. What are the Vikings going to do? Are they going to keep Kirk? Or are they going to let him walk? Are they going to what's going to happen?
It's a pretty compelling argument Christopher Gates has right there. That might be the way to go. The only problem is they're not taking a quarterback early. And what's the odds these late guys don't bring up Tom Brady in the 299 overall? People always bring that up, like, if you found him, you can find him. It's really a low percentage to get a 6th or 7th round John David Booty or something, and he works out. So I would wait till next year. The quarterback group, I like that. From what little I've checked on the 2024 guys, but I think play it out from here because you got to move on at some point, don't you? I mean, with what Rhino just said, that kind of seals it for me. If there's still 90 million, I'd play it out 1 year and that's it.
The problem I'm having with Chris's theory, and I think it's a good working theory. I agree that the Vikings don't want to give Kirk a 3 or 4 year extension. That gets him to 38, 39 years old. Guys generally start declining. I know Rodgers is playing well. I know Tom Brady played well, but those guys are the exception and not the rule.
Sure.
If you go with that theory, then and they want to get their guy, and I firmly believe that you've got one shot, and if you want to do it your way, you want to get your guys, and one of the big positions of your guys that you want to get is quarterback, if not the biggest position. So if they want to do that, then they're going to want to get a guy this year to sit behind Kirk and let him start next year.
Right.
Where's the draft capital that they have this year to go up and move up to get a guy?
The problem with that is if you look at the way the board is falling, if you look at teams that need quarterbacks and whatever, you're going to have to probably move all the way up to number 3 if you want to get a quarterback, because Carolina made a big trade to get up to number 1. You don't make that trade unless you're taking a quarterback.
No.
Houston's taking a quarterback at 2.
Yep.
Indianapolis is probably taking a quarterback at 4. And then by that time, you're on like the 4th best quarterback in the draft class. And then I know you want to get a guy this year and let him carry the clubs for Kirk Cousins for a season, but you probably end up just taking like a late round flyer on a guy this year and see if you have something. But if that doesn't work out, then next year is where I think you focus getting on your quarterback, because they've only got the 5 picks at this point this year, and it would probably make more sense for them to trade back in round 1 rather than try to give up future draft capital to try to move up for a guy at this point. So I don't see them doing any kind of move that's going to get them one of those first round type quarterbacks this year. It's just going to cost way too much.
Unless they found the late round gem and turned that around and did it that way. Maybe Russell Wilson was 5th round or something. I don't know. Maybe
he was 3rd round. And so let's look at a couple of those late round gems or mid round gems. One name I saw earlier, Georgia quarterback Stetson Bennett. Another guy I've seen floating around the late 2nd, early 3rd round. Herndon Hooker, the Tennessee quarterback. Jay Johnson just added, what if they trade Kirky this year during the draft to get a quarterback of the future? That's a really good question. A lot of people don't know, but Kirk has a no trade clause. So look, if they're going to trade Kirk, a couple of things would have to happen. 1, he would have to waive that no trade clause. And 2, if he waives it, then he would have to find a team willing to give him a contract extension, which is what he wants. And I don't blame him. And who would be willing to do that? You just have to tell me who the suitors were. I don't know. That's a possibility, but a lot of things have to fall into place for that to happen. And I think Kirk's cap number would just be huge this year anyways. So I don't know. I think the Vikings are going to be willing to let him walk and maybe get a guy this year. And man, if they move up to get a guy like Stroud or Anthony Richardson or Will Levis from Kentucky, man, they're wasting a lot of draft capital to do that. I mean,
yes,
I don't know.
I don't want. We're not in position to do that. I'm 100% on the board with trading back from the first pick, the first round. We 100%. Not even. This is the easiest call for what the Vikings should do in the first round. That's the last 20 years for me. You have to trade back.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree. So
you can't go from pick 23 to pick 87, Ted, and expect to get blue chip talent. You can't.
No, my optimal scenario for them is to trade down like 4 or 5 spots and get a couple picks, and then trade down another 3 or 4 spots and get another couple picks and have several picks, kind of like what he did last year in the draft, and just kind of go from there. And
I was actually talking to somebody today saying we trade out at 23. We might trade again before we actually take somebody.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised to see 2 trade backs before we select anybody. And you know what Viking Nation will do? Might as well hire Rick Spielman back.
Yeah, and Vikings Uncensored just said Kirk won't be traded. If he is, it's $48.5 million cap hit. And I knew it was like ridiculous. So I don't see it happening. But
Rhino,
we'll see what happens. Yeah, go ahead.
Rhino also said during the Byron Murphy talk that the Cardinals offered him the same contract we did, and he elected to come here. So,
well, I mean, like
Rhino's on it tonight. Rhino's giving us some good info. Vikings Uncensored. Thanks, Rhino.
When you look at the Byron Murphy contract, he's probably saving or making it. Even all things being equal, he's probably still making an extra $2 or $3 million in Minnesota because he doesn't have to pay for meals at the Cardinals facility. Because Bidwell's such a cheapskate.
That'll be $10 for your box lunch. What? That's funny.
So that's where we sit with Kirk right now. The other big restructure that everybody was waiting to hear about was Harrison Smith. And it turns out he did restructure. He took a pretty significant pay cut to stay with the Vikings, going from $14 million down to $8 million. And I think most people are very happy with that. Very happy that Harrison Smith's coming back.
Totally happy.
Yeah,
I'm as happy as a junkie in an Oxycontin factory about that.
Wow.
I am.
That's pretty happy.
I feel like I said our live show on last Monday, that there's something about him that they're gonna lean on. I think Flores likes him, and I think, of course, O'Connell likes him. There's a lot of experience back there with Harrison Smith. I know he doesn't play like he used to. I know he's not as quick laterally as he used to be. And I know maybe his coverage skills aren't as good, but you know what? He knows how to set people up for success in the secondary. You need a coach in the secondary, Ted, and he's the guy. So I'm all for the signing.
Chris, I think you were also on board with Hitman coming back, weren't you?
Definitely. I mean, it's tough to judge anybody on the Vikings defense based on last season, just because the scheme was so bad.
Yeah.
Right.
And Harrison Smith seems like the guy that could really sort of flourish in the Brian Flores more aggressive defense. Drew talked about Byron Murphy's blitzing ability before. Harrison Smith is a pretty darn good pass rusher when he's given the opportunity to, and Flores could be sending both of those guys a lot. But yeah, he's one of those guys. He's transitioned from the guy that's constantly among the 2 or 3 best safeties in the league. He's what I'm pretty sure they would class as a wily veteran at this point. That he has the knowledge, he has the experience, where that knowledge and experience kind of makes up for the fact that he doesn't quite have the speed and the movement that he used to at one point. But yeah, I'm pretty happy he's back. He's the longest tenured Viking. He's been there since 2012. He's basically the last link to the Zimmer Spielman era. And yeah, I'm happy to see the guy back.
You know what's cool about him is he's a high character guy too, Ted. You don't see him on TikTok doing dancing, and out in the field acting like an a-hole.
Yeah.
I mean, that guy's been here, 12 years? He never gets in trouble. He's a football player. He's responsible. I mean, character goes a long way. And Harrison Smith, I've always respected that you don't see him in the headlines every other day, smoking pot and getting busted for grabbing some chick's butt at the Wendy's restaurant. I mean, I like that about him. And I think Mensa likes that about him as well.
Yeah. And you add that, like when you look at the Vikings at their best on defense, 2015, 2016, 2017, Harrison Smith just absolutely wreaked havoc. I mean, Mike Zimmer would bring him up on the line and then drop him back at the last minute, would have him back and then blitz and come out of nowhere. And I think Brian Flores wants to do that to an extent with Harrison Smith in his defense. And I'm really excited of all the guys we've talked about in the offseason of veterans like Thielen and Smith and Zadarius Smith and Cook and everybody else. Should they come back? Should they not? That was the one guy I was hoping they could get back because I would like to see him in a Brian Flores defense for 1 year. And yeah, he's not the guy he was 4 or 5 years ago, but I still think if utilized properly, he can be very effective. And I'm looking forward to it.
The Vikings think he still has a lot in the tank because of Kendricks, Dantzler, Peterson, they're all gone. They kept one of them. They kept one of them right now, and you're right, Ted. I think that's accurate.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, are any of us the guys we really were 4 or 5 years ago?
Honestly, I am.
I'm not the guy I was an hour ago. I'm
twice the guy I was 5 years ago in terms of weight.
Wow. Yeah. I wasn't going to go there. You went there. I wasn't going to go there.
So Harrison Smith is back. But that still leaves, we mentioned Zadarius Smith, and we talked a little bit about Dalvin Cook earlier. With the Davenport signing, Drew, do you think this means Zadarius Smith is out or they're going to keep him? Because, look, he's got a very reasonable contract as a defensive end / rush outside linebacker in the 3-4, market value-wise compared to most guys. That's why Zadarius Smith was wanting his release to get a better deal elsewhere. Does he come back or does Davenport replace him?
He's not Zadarius Smith by any means, I don't think. I mean, first off, what scheme is Flores running? Do you guys know?
3-4. Yeah, he's going to run a 3-4, but he said
3-4, yeah.
He also said it's going to vary on whoever the opponent is, which made me all tingly inside because Ed Donatel wouldn't be.
I think Zadarius Smith was hurt the second half of the season because remember those numbers he was putting up?
Yeah.
He was putting up those crazy ass numbers every week. I mean, he was highly productive, then it kind of tailed off, but I don't see him coming back. And I like him as a player. I think he's a great teammate, locker room guy. I think he really gets the best out of his teammates. Yeah. But I'm old Bud Grant. I'm Bud Grant. If you don't want to be here, then don't be here. He doesn't want to be here, sounds like to me.
Okay, Chris, what about you? Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Finish up.
No, that's kind of how I feel.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, if he asked to be released and that he doesn't want to be here, I mean, we've said before, you don't want guys that don't want to be here necessarily, but I don't know if that was some kind of misunderstanding between him and the team. And you said that was before the Davenport signing. I mean, maybe he likes Marcus Davenport. Maybe he's a guy that, thinks gets Zadarius Smith closer to where he wants to be as a potential, championship football player. I mean, it's really tough to tell. I mean, like we said, the Vikings are under the cap, so they don't necessarily have to do anything with him, but that's definitely going to be one of the situations to keep an eye on going forward.
Ted, I would almost if they keep Zadarius Smith, I would shove Davenport to the edge on the 3-4 as one of the down linemen. He could play inside. He's a great player inside. He was in his college days, and that might be a plan too.
Okay. We talked about Dalvin Cook and his contract and the running back contract number. Let me ask you guys before we move on to kind of some philosophical generalities or whatever. Will the Vikings roll with that $20 million cap hit at the running back position this year, Chris?
I don't think they do. I think they do something with Dalvin Cook, probably draft weekend. You flip him for you're not going to get a lot for him as a running back. I mean, you can maybe get a 4th or a 5th round pick, But yeah, I think they're going to do something with him because that's just way too much to devote to the running back position at this point.
Drew.
I'm undecided on what they're going to do with Cook. I thought if he was gone, he would have been gone by now.
Okay.
Sure, you get a 4th-round pick for him, but if you sign him, and then next year an NFL team loses their top back, which happens every single year since I've been alive, then your trade turns into a 2nd-round pick because you got leverage with that. I mean, I don't know how that works out financially, but it seems like Cook would have made a decision on him if they wanted to move him. I mean,
okay, yeah,
I don't know.
Look, I just, like I said earlier, I don't think Kwesi's going to do the $20 million number at the running back position. I just don't. Now, does that mean they're going to get a restructure out of Cook or trade him? I don't know. I just don't think they're going to stay at that number, whatever that may be.
Let me ask you guys this: what about Wangwu, Wang Chung, and Chandler? They're just wasting the years away. When are they going to use these guys? Guys,
I kind of thought with the Madison re-signing that it was going to be kind of a running back by committee with Madison, Wangwu, and Chandler. I think he's one of those guys bring different things to the table. Madison, I figured they were going to re-sign because he's the veteran. If they were going to get rid of Cook, and I think I would be fine with that. I think that's a good running back by committee triumvirate, if you will.
I'd be okay with that.
And that's basically what Kevin O'Connell and the Rams did in Los Angeles. I mean, they didn't have one primary back. They had Cam Akers, they had Sony Michel, they had Darrell Henderson was there. I mean, they didn't have one guy that say, hey, we're going to give this guy 25 carries a game and he's going to be the guy and whatever.
Good point.
So, if you're going to give Dalvin Cook that $14 million, the expectation is that he's going to be the guy. But if you're going to try to save that money and go with the committee approach, then yeah, I don't think Cook is long for this roster anymore.
I think Cook is hanging around, Ted, because the Vikings aren't liking getting a 5th-round pick for him. I think that's what the holdup is. I think that's what it is.
I think that's exactly it. I think Kwesi Adofo-Mensah has a number or value in mind of what Dalvin Cook could get in return, and if he doesn't get it,
good for him.
I think he'll keep him. I don't know that he wants to, but I don't think he'll just give him away for nothing.
Like Rick Spielman would have.
Like, we'll see.
No, that's a good point. Good point.
Yeah. So with that, we've kind of seen Kwesi Adofo-Mensah's strategy. Young guys, mid-20s, short contracts, not really long cap crippling numbers down the road. Do you like his strategy and approach to free agency so far, Chris, or are you thinking he should be doing something different?
No, I like what he's been doing. Like you said, these guys that they're signing, they're relatively short deals. Like Davenport's a 1-year deal, Murphy's a 2-year deal, Josh Oliver's a 3-year deal. But that's not a lot of money for a Josh Oliver, I don't think. But yeah, they're doing kind of the opposite of what Spielman was doing at the end of his time here. Targeting the younger players rather than extending guys and eventually going 1 year too long with some of those folks. I mean, they cut Adam Thielen, they cut Eric Kendricks, and it was probably time for both of those guys to go as far as that's concerned. But yeah, they're targeting the younger guys and they're not crushing themselves in the future, like you said. So no, I really like what Kwesi's been doing through the first couple of days of free agency.
What do you think of the strategy, Drew? Do you think that is a strategy, or do you think he's kind of setting something up to do something else?
I think it's totally the strategy that what he wants to do right now. This is what impresses me. Both those free agent signings, Davenport and Murphy that we talked about tonight, those are both still relatively young guys. You're not spending a bunch of money on them, and you're not spending money spent on Bobby Ray Slapjack from the Browns.
Bobby Ray Slapjack.
I'm telling you, Murphy,
Rutgers, by the way.
Murphy and Davenport were both first-round blue chippers coming out of it. So he's getting guys that have the potential, high potential, not Bobby Ray Slapjack, that can play at a really high level. Look at the money he spent. Barely nothing for those two guys. And both those guys are great players, I'm telling you. They're just dealing with injuries. Murphy's been stuck in Arizona. Whatever happens good in Arizona. Nothing except the Scorpion song. they wrote called Arizona. That's the only good thing about that whole place. So I think spending a little bit of money. They're not old. They're not 33. They're younger guys still. A little bit of money with upside up the yin yang. He's doing exactly how you're supposed to do in free agency, I think.
Yeah, I'm really impressed. He's turning over the roster, getting rid of guys that probably should have they should have parted ways with a couple of years ago. And he's not sacrificing the cap in future years in acquiring young new talent. I like it. I'm a big fan of it. And I think this approach has been long overdue for the Vikings. I think they tried to keep guys together around for too long and kind of run it back, and obviously it wasn't working. So now he's taking this methodical approach, he's not getting rid of everybody at once because I think that would just blast the cap, but he's doing it piecemeal. And he's replacing those guys and getting younger and I think getting faster and more athletic in the process. And I'm a big fan.
He's bringing guys in that aren't just going to be average players. They have the upside to be A-plus players. And if they turn out to be what we think they are, what they were in the past, and at least in the draft, man, that's how you do it, Ted.
Yeah.
That's exactly how you do it.
So free agency is only a couple days old, even with legal tampering. We're less than a week into it. Chris, what positions do you think still need to be addressed before we get to the draft next month?
I mean, they've done a pretty solid job of addressing things here so far. I mean, I don't know if they kept Jordan Hicks, so linebacker with Asamoah is not really a huge need. I don't know if they want to take another swing at the corner position or whatnot, just to have another veteran type guy in there. But, that they've kind of put themselves in a position where, we've been tracking the mock drafts at DN and what position they have the Vikings going at. And I don't think they're necessarily locked into a corner at number 24 or wherever their first pick is anymore. So, they've really set themselves up to be able to take the best available player and kind of take a swing at some guys in free agency, whether it's a linebacker or a cornerback, or I don't know if you want like a number 3 wide receiver. I mean, the top end guys are going to cost way too much. You'd probably be better off just drafting someone at that spot. But if I had to pick one position, I would say probably taking another swing at corner to go along with Byron Murphy.
And are we talking free agency or draft? So
free agency. So what position do you think needs to be addressed in free agency, Drew? Chris said corner to go along with Murphy. What do you think?
I kind of lean towards corner. Linebackers, you want to get young. You don't want to get, I'm saying Bobby Wagner and those guys, it didn't work out when they tried their second deals over. But I would probably say corner. I wouldn't, and maybe wide receiver. I don't know. I'd like to draft a guy because I think wide receivers, you end up giving up too much money for what, Nelson Aguilar. What the hell wants that guy? Do you know how much money that guy made and didn't do anything?
Yeah.
I'm probably thinking corner. Mostly interior offensive line seems to be pretty good. We're going to draft somebody there, but the corner group is not finished. So I'm in agreement with Chris. I think they're going to bring in another guy.
I think of all the remaining free agents, the top tier guys, Bobby Wagner, OBJ, the Vikings are going to sign them. They're going to sign them like 5-year, $500 million deals, like everybody on Twitter wants them to do.
And Slay, we're going to get Slay too. Don't forget about that.
Yeah, he may have re-signed a deal with Philadelphia, but he's coming to Minnesota.
Oh, we're getting Jasecki too. Back up Hawkinson. We're getting him too. We're getting everybody.
I think corner is a good choice. I would also go with linebacker as well. I think those are the two positions that really need the most attention. With that said, how do you think free agency so far, if at all, has affected what the Vikings are going to do in the draft?
And like Drew said, I mean, if you're going to go for a wide receiver, I mean, we've talked about this before in the passing game. Justin Jefferson's your number 1 guy, and TJ Hawkinson is obviously your number 2 threat in the passing game. Adam Thielen's gone. If you believe KJ Osborne can step up and take that spot, then you could go ahead and roll with him if you want to. But I think this kind of increases the likelihood that they go a wide receiver in round one, whether it's a Quentin Johnson or a Jordan Addison or a player like that. But they've really positioned themselves pretty well to kind of be able to do whatever they want in the first round. And I think that they're not locked into cornerback anymore after the Murphy signing, and they're probably going to take another swing at that in free agency too. So yeah, they're not locked into to one spot anymore. I think they can just kind of do whatever they feel like doing at this point.
Sure. Best player available? I mean,
yeah. What do you think, Drewster?
We talked a few weeks ago about if somebody fell like I forgot his name in Jigba from Ohio State, or the running back Robinson. If that would pretty much be the only exception. But I would trade back from number one. Wide receiver certainly up front. Brian Asamoah has a ton of pressure on him to come through at linebacker. That's probably the most pressured spot. That's probably the most pressured spot on the Viking starters next year. He's got a ton of pressure on him. Say what you want about Eric Kendricks. That guy was a leader and a tackler, and that guy was great back there. So he's got a lot of pressure. If that doesn't work out, it creates a big hole. So I'd probably go take another look at linebacker and see what I could get later in the draft. But corner help. If they trade back, I can still get a good corner. There's a lot of good corners in this draft class. Interior, I just did my guard group. Worst guard group I've seen in a long time. It's pedestrian, to say the least. So you're not going to – I don't like that. So I would try to say that maybe. But like Chris said, they're open to take any area they want. There's a lot of options, positionally speaking, for the Vikings.
I think – honestly, I think it depends on how the board falls, and that's sort of a cop-out. I get it. I do. But it feels to me like they're going to look at offense in the draft, and if that's the case, then probably wide receiver. And if a guy like Jackson Smith and Jigba falls, and he's sitting there at 23, I think they'd be hard pressed. Although I would like for them to trade down. A guy like Njigba would be a good fit for the Vikings. I like KJ Osborne. I don't know. I think it was Rhino of Vikings Uncensored said that. I don't know. I agree. I don't know that he's a wide receiver 2. I think he's a great wide receiver 3. If he can't, they're going to need a wide receiver 2, which they might look to in free agency. Oh. But some of those guys like Juju Smith-Schuster got signed. I kind of kidded about OBJ, but he's out there. He said he wants $20 million a year. He's not going to get that.
What about Jalen Naylor? I didn't even know her. We haven't given up on him yet. I don't know.
I don't know that he's ready to step up and become like even maybe a wide receiver 3. But if
we don't even know what he is yet.
Yeah, that's true. There's a lot of directions the Vikings can still go, and free agency. There's a lot to play out with that as well.
You imagine Njigba and J.J. Jefferson on the same offense? Oh my! Or Hyatt. Hyatt's going to be a really great player himself.
I'd be a big fan personally, but that's just me.
That would be sweet.
Yeah. All right. So look, we've been going at this almost an hour.
Somebody say it in the chat. Somebody say it. Let's see it. He just opened the door for you. Somebody say it. Oh, you guys are slow tonight. Come on, chat.
Ruby, you ready to spin that wheel and figure out who our prize winner is?
All right, let me see if I can do it correctly this time.
That's what.
All right, can you see it?
Is that right?
Hey, can we spin the wheel twice in honor of my daughter's birthday?
Yes, Amber.
Yep.
All right, so the first prize, go ahead and spin it. We'll see who that goes to.
What's the best Prince song?
I think Let's Go Crazy, but that's just me.
No, I probably agree. Who is that?
All right.
Is that
Ryan B?
Ryan Bianconi?
It is.
Congratulations. Yeah, I think it's Bianconi.
What up, Bianconi?
Yep.
That guy directs movies. He makes movies, Ted.
Yeah, he does.
He's in production on a real good one right now. That guy's awesome.
Shut up. Here's number 2.
Reggie Adams, Barbecue Smokehouse King. Well done.
Reggie, what are you barbecuing tonight? Please put it in the chat so we all see.
All right, Ryan, Reggie, you know the drill. You both won prizes before. Go to our website, VikingsReport.com. click on the prize vault, get a hold of Ruby. Vikings Report with Drew and Ted at gmail.com. Let her know what you want, and we'll get that out headed your way. Congratulations, guys. All right. Before we get out of here, Chris, anything you want to say? Anything you got coming up on DN? Whatever. You've got the floor, my friend.
No, just happy to be here with you guys, and the first few days of free agency have been pretty interesting. We're 6 weeks away from the draft, which is going to be awesome. And that's pretty much everything. I mean, I think things have gone really well, and it's really hard to argue with what's happened so far.
Drewster?
I am completely happy right now with how the offseason is going. The Vikings are active. Their reasoning for the guys they're getting makes sense at this point. It's not trading for Herndon, the tight end. I'm excited about the Viking season right now. Every day it gets more exciting. I like the direction they're going. I like the confidence they have. And this is going to be interesting now, this going up to the draft to see what happens. But we got a lot more draft coverage coming up in our studio shows. But I'm glad about the overhaul of this team from the top to bottom.
Me too. I like the direction Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah is pointing the ship. I like what he's doing with the roster. Everybody talks about the Bears and the Lions winning free agency. I don't know that they've won it. But I don't know that the Vikings have lost it either. I think the Vikings are still going to be a tough football team in 2023, just on the moves they've done so far, and we'll see how that goes as we head into the draft. So this is our last live show for a little bit. We will be back in studio next week, so look for our regularly scheduled programming. Not this Saturday, but next Saturday we'll be back. Maybe if something big breaks over the next week or so, we may do a quick live hit. We'll play that by ear. We'll let you guys know either way. For Christopher, for Drew, for Ruby, everybody who is in the chat tonight, thank you so much for joining us. Please like the show. Please subscribe if you haven't, and check out some of our past shows. I think we do pretty good work, all things considered. We will be back next Saturday. Thanks again, everybody, and Skol Vikes.
See you later. Thank you.